you're a pioneer in the space, right? Like you kind of coined the carnivore diet. You
Yeah.
and you were the one who really popularized that. And you're
Yeah,
in
I mean, like I said, this diet has been around for a long time. I didn't invent eating only meat. I mean, that goes back to like, I mean, it goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. You can look at James Salisbury in the the 1800s. You can look at guys like the Scottish surgeon, I'm blanking on his name now. But anyway, it's been described forever, right? They've used all meat diets to treat diabetes back in the 1700s. Um, there was a group of people that were calling themselves zero carb. We don't eat carbs. We're zero carb. And I was, I got somehow interested in them, started observing them. I thought they were nuts. I thought they're crazy, right? Like everybody else does. And they, but they were putting up results that were pretty compelling to me. And I was open minded enough. I had already gone through the low carbish sort of transition where I kind of, at least felt I kind of sort of distant. I kind of got over the low fat is it the right thing type of thing to do, or at least was questioning that. And so yeah, it was a zero carb diet. I tried it myself. And very publicly back on at the time it was Twitter in 2016, and I had a few thousand followers, not to the extent that I have now, but and somehow, somehow Joe Rogan saw that and invited me on his show, and I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't really realize how popular he was at the time, and he's obviously more popular even now. And so then that obviously got a lot of eyes on what I was doing, and then a book publisher contacted me and said, "Hey, you're on this crazy all meat diet. Can you write a book about it?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, I can write a book." I had no desire to write a book. I don't even like writing. I mean, it's funny because I mean, most people, I think a lot of people have read it, have enjoyed it, and like the way the writing style because I wrote it for like I wrote the book for like to be as approachable as to as many people as possible. I didn't want it to be too technically difficult that would bore people, but at the same time, I wanted to get the information out there and kind of convey that there is some scientific rationale behind this. But anyway, the title of the book we didn't know, and I said, well, I'm just going to call it the Carnivore Diet, and that's the genesis of the Carnivore Diet. And now there's been a lot of people that have written books about that, and carnivore is now very popular. But before that, no one called it carnivore. I'm the first guy to call it carnivore. Like I said, I didn't invent eating only meat. That goes back to some freaking Neanderthal or Cro-Magnon or you know Homo erectus has invented that diet. But I mean, as far as calling it the carnivore diet, yeah, that's me who's coined that term.
was there anybody, any resources, anything at all that was really like your introduction into this? Because you are the introduction for a lot of people today, but was there anybody for you who
Yeah,
introduced you to this
yeah,
book?
yeah. So, I mean, if you go back to the early part of the 20th century, 1900s, there was a Arctic explorer. His name was Vilmar Stefansson, and and he wrote books, and there's accounts of him living in the Arctic Circle with the Inuit, and describing the fact that, hey, I just eat meat. I only ate meat for like 12 years, basically in total. You know, and he would make those claims. This is back in the 1920s, and everybody thought he was nuts, right? And he said, no, you can just eat meat and be fine. They're like, no, no, no. These people from Harvard and all these other, no, you can't do that. So very famously in 1928, in Bellevue Hospital in New York, he put himself in a metabolic ward, and they observed him, around the clock. And he did this study for a year, and he just ate meat, and he was like, fine. He was like, look, I'm totally fine. And so they wrote about 6 academic papers back in the 1920s about this. So that was the kind of the early, I guess, modern genesis to this. And then there was a guy named the Bear, Stanley Owsley. It was kind of funny. He was like an LSD manufacturer who used to work, and he used to supply the Grateful Dead. I don't know if you remember that band,
Oh yeah.
the Grateful Dead with
Yeah.
LSD, right? But he was on a carnivore diet, and he'd done it for some like 50 something
Wow.
years. And then, there's been a couple other physicians over the years who kind of talked about that. And then where I kind of got some of the information was there was this group of people on Facebook, kind of crazy and weird as it sounds, called Zeroing In on Health, and it was a zero carb. It was kind of their little way to describe that. And there was a few thousand members that were just talking about, hey, I'm no longer diabetic. I'm no longer got this disease, and I feel better. And I that was my initial introduction. to that. And they're still going on, and there's some good people. And, like I said, and that's honestly what shaped my view was largely taken from what their experience was, because I'm like, why reinvent the wheel? Because, then you start getting all these doctors and other people involved, and they're like, oh, but you got to do this and you got to do this. And I'm like, man, these people already figured it out, dude. Just, there's nothing that beats experience. Right. And you can, like, then you can science it and then you jack it up. That's what we often do. We try to put the human, like nature figures things out, right? Over periods of, millennia, and so when we go in there like, oh, we can do a better job, and then you get some weird stuff that happens. And so, yeah, that's the genesis of the carnivore diet from my perspective.